Since returning to the top flight in 2013, Crystal Palace have made themselves the home of First Division football south of the river. Combined with the fallen mediocrity of neighbours Charlton, Wimbledon and Millwall, the Palace find themselves as the dominant power in South London. Now, despite this relative success, European football has continued to evade the Eagles, who have only ventured into the top half once in their 8-year Premier League stay. Instead, it's concentrated by their neighbours in the north, that fly London's flag on the continent, with European champions Chelsea, Europa League chasing West Ham and Tottenham in the Conference League for the 21-22 campaign. But with a new manager and a younger, exciting crop of players, can Palace take that next step forward in the coming years? So let's start with the manager then. Patrick Vieira, Ollie, obviously a legend at your club Arsenal. He's come in this summer. There was lots of talk about who they could get and who they were looking to get. Lucien Favre was spoken about, Nuno was spoken about. But in the end, it came to Vieira. What do you think of the appointment? Is he someone that you'd see as the natural fit for Palace and where they want to go? Or what do you think?
Yeah, it shocked me at the start. I didn't expect Vieira to come in. I thought they'd go for someone like a Lampard, maybe an Eddie Howe, someone like that. I really didn't expect Vieira to come to the Prem so soon, to be honest. But based off of their start, I think it could pay off. I was going to say, obviously they've signed some really exciting players, young players, and that's good because I think the problem that Palace were having is that they had an ageing squad. It wasn't really going anywhere in Roy Hodgson's last few years. I think the whole core was just stagnating. They had the same group of players for too long, and Vieira's come in and he's brought in a young core, which I think is only going to get better. But I'd also like to say that I don't think it's going to happen immediately.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It's sort of like you're saying, it's a bit of a wider point I want to make. It's Palace have come up in sort of a traditional style, right? As Michael West Ham came up in a really similar way. You look at the managers they employed. I'm thinking off the top of my head here, Warnock, Allardyce, even Hodgson to an extent, Pardew. It's sort of, that merry-go-round of managers that get speaking about. And it's like, this is sort of the old way of coming up. You're getting experienced pros, but the team from 2013 is gone, right? They're trying to look to change and move on, and maybe the Palace fans wouldn't want to hear it, but it's really Brighton and Southampton, I think, on the coast have really shown these different ways of doing it and different ways of coming up, of course, Leeds and Wolves as well. But I think these two are really comparable because I was against when Chris Hughton was sacked at Brighton. I thought, well, because Brighton and Palace, with all due respect to the clubs, they're looked at in the same way as clubs that kind of should just be happy enough to be here in the Premier League. You stay up for a few years and then you'll go back down and maybe you'll come back and I don't want to say the words yo-yo clubs, but they were sort of expected to just kind of be happy with this. But with Vieira and with Potter and with, say, even Southampton, the coaches they brought in, I think notably Pochettino, Koeman, you're looking at these clubs that have a plan, that have an identity, and that are looking to be ambitious, and we should look for that in our clubs. Because let's talk about it then, because I think that's what you need in the Premier League now. We're looking at this as like a product, right? The Premier League's the best league in the world. You should expect your team to play good football. There was times last year where Roy Hodgson was putting out 3 defensive midfielders and playing Eze wide and not really maximising what he can with that squad. And you're looking at talking about Vieira now. He's early to the Premier League. He's not someone we would really see coming in. But he's looking to play more of a possession game and more of a passing game. And although that's not typically been Palace, isn't it what they deserve? Isn't it how they should be doing these things?
100%. I mean, I've got a mate who's a Palace fan, and he was saying some of the football they were playing last year was dire. I mean, they've got exciting players, so they should be dominating the ball. You can't have players like, last year, even Eze, Zaha, like they're players that give them the ball, get on the front foot, take games to the big teams. And I think with the players that they've actually signed this summer, it's only, I think, they're only going to be expected to play even better football. And Vieira, in the past, has looked to dominate possessions at teams he's been at, Nice, New York. And I think, bringing in a player like Olise, it's exciting. Obviously, he's young. I wouldn't expect him to come in straight away and start. But when Eze comes back, that team, it's going to look like it's going to create a lot of chances for the likes of Odsonne Edouard, who I'm sure we're going to get onto. I mean, he already looks exciting, scored in his first first few touches against Spurs and then grabbed another. But it's looking like the players they're bringing in, they're all under 23, a little bit like Arsenal. But yeah, they're going somewhere. I mean, I think it's quite interesting that they brought in. You very rarely see a team buy two central defenders and play them next to each other straight away. I mean, it's quite old, which is why I don't think we should expect it to, just be immediate success for them. But I do like the profile of players they're going for. Anderson, I mean, even though he's been at Fulham and Fulham got relegated, I do like Anderson. I think he's a good player. Mark Guehi, brilliant in the Championship last year. Part of one of the best defences in the Championship. Swansea had a great record, so yeah, I really like the profile of players that they've brought in, and I think Vieira he's kind of getting the foundations to kick on with this Palace team.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think as well, something that you've pointed out there needs to be spoken about is that this isn't going to be straight away success. It's going to be a longer process, a bit of a change at the club. And I've got something I want to talk about in terms of where Palace are weak and how they're trying to play this new style. So Vieiras been setting them up in a 4-3-3 so far. But I just want to move that along. And I've got on here in this little animation is their average positions against Brighton that they played last night. Now, as you can see, you speak about the two defenders there, Guehi and Anderson, very good defenders, but they're really high up. They're almost playing on the halfway line. So it's showing that aggression that they want to press, they want to hold the ball, but they want to play higher up. They want to play in your half and they want to bring the game to the big teams, no matter who that is. And Brighton, to them, isn't a big team, but it's a big game. But the real issue for me is this midfield, because although they are doing better with possession, I mean, they've had a 9% possession increase this season. That's more than any other team in the league. No one else has increased their possession as much as Crystal Palace. But the midfield for me, it's not just the lack of quality. For me, James McArthur's a very underrated player, I think, by a lot of neutral fan bases, but I don't see him as outstanding. He's definitely part of that old guard. You need that experience in these teams. But the positional sense of these three players they had starting last night, which was Mitrovic, Gallagher and MacArthur, they're all really high up. And it leaves this massive hole right here in DM. And I really don't like that. Because the Premier League in this current day, you talk about a physical league, it's about two main things. It is about the transition and overlaps. And more or less that's it. Right? I say overlaps, I mean them overloads you can get in either wide areas or in the box. Any team, no matter how good you are, it's about them two things, being brutal in that transition. That's why you see teams come up in the Championship and they're all of a sudden they start shipping 3-4 goals, because it's ruthless in them transitions where you score 1 in 5 in the Championship, you score 3 or 4 in the Premier League. And if we look at this area of the pitch, this defensive midfield, it's a real issue for them. So I'm just going to run this along here, and this really highlights it for me, because Palace are looking to play out from the back a lot more now. So Guaita starts with the ball, and you've got the two centre-backs either side of him looking to play out. Now, the minute the ball goes into them centre-backs, they've really got two options. You look for someone in the defensive midfield position, or you look for a fullback. Now, looking for a fullback, more or less, means two things can happen. You have the ball knocked straight back to the centre-half, or you're going to hit one towards the big man, because they're likely the other team aren't just going to let you pass to the wide man. So that's the one option, but Palace don't want to hit the big man as much as they used to. They want to play out. So the other option is that defensive midfield spot where I've got Mitrovic in this. And him, to me, and it's not just him, because he's probably the best one they've had at it of that midfield, because Conor Gallagher can maybe do it a bit more because of that sort of Chelsea education. But James MacArthur, for me, isn't comfortable enough on the ball to take the ball in the half turn. And to really put yourself into the sort of scenario that I think could happen if they've had the ball knocking off to, say, a Chet Kouyaté or James MacArthur or someone like that, is the situation that you'll remember as an Arsenal fan, that one happened a few years ago when you played Watford and they knocked the ball into Guendouzi. I'm not sure if that rings any bells, but he got pounced on in the transition by Watford, and Watford go on the score and ultimately win that game, I think. But the same situation can happen here. If you're leaving this midfield open, it's a big issue if you're going to get pressed in transition, and I think teams will figure that out. Now, a lot of Palace fans will be saying, well, we've got Eze, we've got Elise, we've got these players in midfield to come back, but you don't want them sitting deep. You want them in these positions that Gallagher and MacArthur and Mitrovic are taking up in yesterday. You want them higher up the pitch where they can go and affect and win you the games. They're very good creative players. And this big gap, it could be a real issue, and maybe it'll see them move to, say, a 4-2-3-1 where they sort of plug the area for a bit more solidity and create more of a box between the two centre halves and the two DMs. But as it stands, that to me looks like an area of weakness. And when teams are trying to evolve their style, there's going to be teething problems, no matter what. And they've got two very good centre-backs there. But that defensive midfield position, it could be a real worry for Crystal Palace. If they don't evolve and change that. What do you think? Because a lot of Palace fans will say, look, Eze can pick up the ball deep. At least say I don't know too much about, completely honestly, but if I've watched him, he seems not a similar player to Eze, but he seems very competent as a dribbler. Do you see these players maybe coming in deep and taking the ball? How do you see the new players as well fitting into this sort of style and this sort of new Crystal Palace, Vieiras Palace?
Yeah, well, it's funny you touched on midfield because you said maybe they lack a 6 who can receive the ball from the goalkeeper. And they've signed two quite similar players in Gallagher and someone we haven't mentioned yet, Will Hughes as well, who I don't really see either of them as a natural 6. I see them more both an 8. And yeah, so it's interesting they've bought two of maybe the same calibre of player instead of maybe a long-term replacement for Milivojevic or MacArthur, who are quite like press resistant and are comfortable taking the ball off the goalkeeper, and giving him another option in possession who can just sit in between the two central defenders. So, I mean, we haven't really seen much of Will Hughes just yet. Maybe he can adapt to that position. I don't know. I haven't watched him in a long time because he's been in the Championship for a while. So yeah, it will be interesting. I do think that them players can adapt to the way that Vieira wants to play, especially Anderson. I think Anderson is a very comfortable defender in possession, and I think him and Guehi can complement each other quite well because one's aggressive and one's quite calm and relaxed on the ball.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's all about complementing each other, isn't it, in terms of the players you have working together. And you're right, because Will Hughes got some rave reviews from Watford fans last year in defensive midfield and talking about, I mean, obviously fans get overhyped, and there was talk of England at one point for him for some of their fans, which I think is a bit of a stretch too far. But it would be interesting to see how they work together in the midfield. But it shows the players they've picked up, of course, barring the likes of Edouard, but it's that Championship focus again. And you look at Steve Parish, Dougie Freedman, the people up there, seriously, they have an idea and they've got an identity and a cohesive vision for this club, which is something that other teams lack, to be completely honest. I mean, everyone wants to pick up the next biggest star from the Championship, right? My team tried to do it with Ben Rama, and it's really, for me, it's from James Maddison's success at Leicester that everyone starts looking now at this league as they look at this league, don't they? They think there might be someone in here who can take us further on. Mason Mount, Championship player at one point, albeit on loan. Harry Maguire. There's quality players in these leagues, and if Palace can get the right players, and I think in Vieiras they already have, Elise still needs to be seen, I think they can push on towards European football. It's a big if, because I think that, like you say, you've got other teams that got to get into that sort of cluster of, say, Everton, West Ham, Aston Villa, and they spend a lot of money, some of them teams, that they can't compete with. But it's not always about spending the most money. It's about getting that rub of the green and also being together and having a cohesive unit. So the question I'm going to ask is a bit of a stretch, because like I said, they've only got into the top 10 once in the last 8 years in the Premier League, which was the first season they came up, I think. Do you see Crystal Palace as a team that, I don't think they're going to be any worries of them going down this year, because I think this year it's just about changing the style and staying up. But do you see them as someone that can kick on and maybe try and, have a little go in Europe? Because that's every fan's dream, isn't it? To go on the continent. And if you're not supporting Man City or someone or Liverpool, you don't see this all the time. Do you think there's a chance that they can push on and really be one of them teams that can maybe, in a good year, maybe get to a cup final or maybe get themselves into a European conversation?
I think that's a little bit more realistic. Maybe, have a nice little cup run. It's a team in transition. I wouldn't expect them to challenge for Europe maybe just yet. I think the main thing this season is just invigorating the fans a little bit, playing some exciting football which they haven't seen in a while. And it's a fresh start for Palace, because a lot of these fans are just used to, quite old school managers, and it's different for them. They've got some really exciting players. They've got a young coach who I'm sure is full of fresh ideas. And yeah, I think it will be interesting. I think if I could take a guess at where they'd finish this season, maybe 11th, 10th. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, you can't just expect all these great players to come in at once and everything's going to click straight away. So I wouldn't worry just yet. But maybe in the future, if they can start, maybe addressing that midfield situation next summer, and these young players keep growing together, then they could definitely start pushing for Europa League at some point.
Yeah, 100%. We say about the future, not even mention the fact that their academy's just gone to Category 1, which is massive for them, in terms of producing their own players. But that's a good point to end it on, I think. I see them as well in that 10th to 14th. I think they'll be okay in staying up. But I think, I agree, it's exciting times if you're a Crystal Palace fan. It's a fresh start. It's a new era, and you can only see what that holds.